Learning is sponsored by Avi Frolich in honor of Gedalit, who helped him find his ultimate happiness, and by Chamimo Azanan, his beautiful Kala, who is that happiness. Wow, I love that. That was a really, really awesome dedication. And also by DJ Acquisitions, the Yisachar Zvulun sponsorship for the Refuah Shleim of Menachem Mendel ben Sarbatia and Devorah Feiga Bat Rezel. I also should really mention that anybody who's, here tonight, whether bodily or virtually, I gotta say, mad props to you, because I heard there's some other kind of event that's going on tonight. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Something to do with throwing a ball through a hoop.
I'm going to give you another name also. Eliyahu Zalman ben Avram Yisachar.
And Eliyahu Zalman ben
Avram Yisachar.
Ben Avram Yisachar.
My father.
Oh, the Neshama should have Eliyahu. Yeah, so seriously, mad props. And I believe I do have a shout out to Avi, because I promised on Shabbos. So, today, our topic is Jared and Ivanka's flight plans and judging people favorably. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys have seen the same kind of stuff I've been seeing recently on your social media accounts that are exploding, and then the Twitters and the op-eds and whatnot, and they go something to the effect of, first on Politico, it comes out that Jared and Ivanka flew with the president to Saudi Arabia on Shabbat. And by the way, I should say to you that if you have not... No, well, just saying, this is, truth is truth, this did happen, in fact. And I should mention that you haven't spent a Shabbos until you've done Shabbos in Saudi Arabia. I mean, the singing is beautiful. So they did that, and the world went crazy. And they said that, we had, rabbinic dispensation, but the rabbi who did Ivanka's conversion said that it wasn't me, and they didn't publish it to the rabbi, and now you've got the world on fire. You've got the world on fire, and they're saying terrible things. Again, blogs, op-eds, forums, social media, Twitter, you name it. They're all saying that they're not Orthodox. They're not Orthodox. They claim to be Orthodox. They're not actually Orthodox. We have determined, we, the Orthodox people of the United States of America, who read the Huffington Post and Drudge Report, have determined that Jared and Ivanka are not Orthodox.
Why are they judging people like that? I mean,
that is an excellent question.
I thought they got a hector from their rabbanon because she's the
we shall
president's
see.
daughter. So
we shall see. No one stepped forward actually and took responsibility for giving that dispensation, but we're going to discuss that. So, why is this bad? Why is it bad news for the Jews? I mean, it's actually very interesting because there's an article that I have here that I will quote for you, which uses the words "bad news for the Jews." I thought that was something that only the Rabbeim and Yeshiva said, but no, apparently that makes it to the Washington Post as well. So the two main reasons that I saw going through many of these articles as to why this is so terrible, why this is so horrific, not just for them and their personal decisions, but for us, for everyone who wears the yarmulke and doesn't wear a yarmulke and knows what a yarmulke is. It's terrible. Why? Two reasons. Number one, there are thousands of Jews all over the world, but specifically in New York, in the States mostly, who every Friday afternoon leave early. And they say to their boss, Mr. Abbott, I gotta go because sundown's in 2 hours and I'm Orthodox and, I gotta get out of here. And by the way, they make up the hours. Okay, it's not like, they're working on Christmas and Easter and they're definitely making up the hours, but they do that. So there are people that are saying in the blogosphere, this is terrible, because now when Yankala puts his laptop in his briefcase at Price Cooper and he starts walking out the door on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and Mr. McGillicuddy sees him and says, "Excuse me, where you going? Where you going, Yankel?" And Yankel says, "Oh, well, Mr. McGillicuddy, it's 2 hours." He says, "Well, what are you talking about? You guys are Orthodox." "I know, I read in the newspaper. It's not a problem. You can do your work. You can do your work on a Shabbat." So that's one problem that people are saying that's going to affect. It's going to have a massive effect on accountants and lawyers and professional people all over the country, and in fact, all over the world. Secondly, and this is also not a good thing. It looks a lot like an indulgence. Now, what is this indulgence? So I would like to quote for you from Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin. He's the spiritual leader of Temple Solel in Hollywood, Florida. So he's a good local boy, and it was one of the first articles. Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin. He is a local in Hollywood, a local spiritual leader of a temple, and he went on the internet.
Conservative or Orthodox?
I believe he's Reformed, actually.
Okay.
And
I knew it was one of those.
That's okay. everyone, listen, man, opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one, and oftentimes two. So he came out and he said as follows. I would like to read this for you. He says that, I can say with little fear of contradiction, there was simply no way that Jewish law would permit airplane travel or any vehicular travel on Shabbat or Jewish holiday. Oh, wait, there's one. That would be to save a life. When life is at stake, almost any Jewish law can be breached. That doesn't apply here. No, a multi-billion-dollar arms deal with the Saudis doesn't count. It's not even close. Basically, this is what he says. And furthermore, what's the problem? He says, well, if you really want to get into bad for the Jews territory, you need only see how some Gentiles are responding to this on Facebook. I'm talking about some of my Gentile friends. I'm talking about some of my Gentile friends, especially the Catholics. Some have cynically suggested that Rabbi Plony just means like Rabbi so-and-so, must have received some kind of bribe for offering this ruling. In this rabbinical move, they see all the hypocrisy that they associate with the worst aspects of the Catholic Church. Some have snickered and compared this ill-founded rabbinical decision to selling indulgences, the medieval practice of reducing the amount of punishment for sin. So, says this person, and not just this person, but in fact many other people say that it's hugely problematic because it looks like whenever a very rich and famous and important Jew who's ostensibly Orthodox wants to do something, all they got to do is call up Rabbi Schwartz and say, Rabbi Schwartz, this is what I want to do. And Rabbi Schwartz says, well, the shul needs a new door and a new playground, and all that. Boom, here's a check. Bang, you get your dispensation. So that looks, according to Jeffrey Salkin, that looks a lot like Catholic indulgences. And, in the immortal words of Luther, which I wrote down just because they're so good, he wrote as follows, and he taped this on the door 500 years ago. Why does not the Pope liberate everyone from purgatory for the sake of love, a most holy thing, and because of the supreme necessity of their souls? This would be morally the best of reasons. Meanwhile, he redeems innumerable souls for money, a most perishable thing, with which to build St. Peter's Church, a very minor purpose. So obviously, Luther started the Protestant movement to break away from the Catholic Church because of this issue, because of indulgences. And therefore, says Jeffrey Salkin and many others, this certainly looks a lot like that, like we're buying the ability to break laws. So there are two things. There are two things that need to be understood when it comes to these 2 points, right? Again, the first point sounds like a very valid point. If Jared Kushner, who is explicitly Orthodox, according to him and according to his wife and according to Vogue magazine, if they are explicitly Orthodox and they flew on Air Force One to Saudi Arabia to do an arms deal, then that means that when Yankel, the accountant, on Friday wants to leave, his boss is going to say where you're going, this is going to be a problem. I would like to just analyze this for one moment. Just for one moment. Let's be honest. Let's put this situation to the test. I'm the accountant, okay? I'm the accountant, you're the accountant also. We could use you as an example, yes. So, and I'm walking out, and there's my boss, Mr. McGillicuddy, and he goes, hey, Shlomi! ¿A dónde vas? And I said, well, Shabbos. Shabbos? Aren't you Orthodox? Yes, I'm Orthodox. I have to go. But I read in the newspaper that Jared Kushner flew on Air Force One to Saudi Arabia to do an arms deal with the Saudis. So clearly you don't have to go home early on a Friday. Really? Are we really worried that Mr. McGillicuddy is going to say this? You, Shlomi, are Orthodox, but I know that the Orthodox can do whatever they want because the son-in-law of the president flew on Air Force One to Riyadh to do a Saudi arms deal. I mean, does this sound to you
normal?
Like that's a very legitimate thing for a boss to say. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. Situationally, it definitely could happen, but surprisingly, Jared Kushner is not the high priest of Judaism. He's just not. So it seems like a little bit of a...
And also the president's daughter can get away with things that we can't get away with.
Oh, that's
in
for sure.
terms of the law also, We're
Yes.
not talking about halachic matters, but also like...
Legally, and also certain fashion faux pas that she can get away with that other people
True
cannot.
that.
So again, number one, it's simply not true, or at least it's not usually true, that that's going to happen. The second issue that people had is that, well, this is buying an indulgence from the church. This is a very important distinction that people need to understand. To the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, and please, you out there in the blogosphere, correct me if I'm wrong. The way that indulgences worked is a person who did a sin, a person who did a terrible thing, would be able to purchase from the church to wave a magic wand and wipe away the sin. Gone. It's wonderful. It's really a great system. And they raised a lot of money doing this, and they got a lot of people to join the crusade doing this, because if you hop onto the crusade, we wipe away all your sins. Wonderful! Rabbis can't do that. Rabbis cannot do that. There are many Jews who believe, truthfully, firmly believes in their heart, that rabbis have a magic rabbi wand, and they went to Hogwarts, and in Yeshivish Hogwarts, I guess Hogwarts, and they go to Hogwarts, if you did a sin, I wave my wand, oh, no more sin. I guess it doesn't work.
No,
Doesn't work that way.
you a head there to do things.
Ah, yes, that's exactly where I'm going. I'm going to explain the difference in the mechanics. No, why? Why are you sorry? I'm going to explain the difference in the mechanics between what you're calling a heter or a dispensation and an indulgence. The difference is very, very simple. A rabbi is a lawyer. That's what a rabbi is. Rabbis do not have powers. They don't. I mean, we would love to believe that they did, but, you know, I've met a few. It doesn't work that way. Rabbis are lawyers. In order to become a rabbi, you know what you have to do? You have to pass the bar. You have to pass the bar. You take a bechina, a test on Jewish law. And guess what? If you pass, you're a rabbi. And if you don't pass, you call yourself rabbi. But either way, that's all. That's it. So what can a rabbi do? A rabbi can tell you, like a good lawyer, he could say, well, you know, the law has about 1,000,000,001 applications. And he can look at your situation and say, well, you know, in this situation, according to this statute, and that statute, and that statute, you may go. Is that him deciding something? Or is he telling you that the halacha in this case is X? Because the parameters of Jewish law are that. That is the only thing that a rabbi can do. The only thing that he can do. He doesn't have power beyond that. You really don't. I wish they did, really. That would be, like, super cool. We would have saved probably lots of death and destruction, you know, like, but yeah, that's the way it is. So it's not an indulgence from the church. It doesn't work. The mechanics of that don't work. So I don't really find either issue compelling. Now, I would like to look at it a little bit from the outside, objectively, because, like, everyone already has an opinion about Jared and Ivanka. Like, everyone has an opinion about that. Why? Because they have an opinion about Daddy. They all have an opinion about the president. You can't live on this earth and not have an opinion about President Trump, right? Either this way, somewhere between that, well, whatever it is, you have an opinion. And oftentimes that tends to rub off also on the kids. So if we were looking at this from the outside, in a vacuum, let's pretend we know nothing about these people. Let's analyze the situation and see how exactly it really is that we should be dealing with these issues. So, number one, it's a fact that they flew, right? That doesn't have to be established. That's been established. They flew. They did it. Okay. Well, either he asked for a dispensation and received one, or he didn't. That's a tautology. Either a rabbi told him, yes, Jared, you may go, or a rabbi didn't tell him that. Right? Nothing in between. There was no third option. The rabbi either gave him a dispensation or did not. Those are the two possibilities. Now, if...
We don't know the truth.
That's okay. We don't have to. You'll see. You'll see why. Now, if a rabbi gave him a dispensation, then obviously we'll look at that a very, very different way. The rabbi said he could do it. If the rabbi said he could do it, then you can argue from today until next Wednesday, but it's your issue, your bone to pick is with the rabbi, not with the Kushners. That's where your issue is. So let's begin with what happens if he did not ask for a dispensation, if he didn't ask for a dispensation. Well, why not? This person is explicitly, in his words, Orthodox. Why then did he conceivably not ask for a dispensation? Well, possibly number one, he's lying to you, and he's not Orthodox, and he doesn't care about Shabbat. I don't care! I'm not Orthodox! Nanny, nanny, boo-boo. Right? That is a possibility. One, when confronted with that possibility, should probably do a little bit of mental math and say, why would he claim to be Orthodox? It's not cool to be Orthodox. It's not like Lady Gaga is jumping up and down, you know, on the Super Bowl stage saying, let's be frum! So I don't know why you would do that. Okay, maybe say for his wife to get conversions. There are 1,000,001 ulterior motives that you can probably come up with. So it is a possibility. And if we're going to be honest with each other, intellectually, we have to acknowledge it as a possibility. Possibility one, he's lying and he simply doesn't care. Possibility number one. Possibility number two is he does consider himself Orthodox. Remember, we're talking that he did not ask for a dispensation and went anyway. How is it possible that he's still Orthodox? Let me ask you a question. How many Shabbats do you have to keep to be Orthodox? Let's say, for example, just out of curiosity, let's say you keep, like, 48, right? You keep 48 Shabbats a year. Not 52, you keep 48, that's 90%. 92%. You keep 92% of Shabbat. Are you Orthodox? Yes, no, maybe, it's not enough? You have to do 100%? It has to be 100% Shabbat. So here's my question now, that I think we'll have to really understand, just in our minds, play with the question in your mind. So here you are, let's say you keep 100% of Shabbat. You keep 100% of Shabbat every single week, and then 1 week, it's ultra. It's ultra! Dude, it's ultra! I gotta go to ultra! You have a weakness! And you hop in the Uber, right? In the little, the neon stuff, and boom, you're an ultra, and you didn't keep Shabbat, and then you came home and you keep Shabbat again the next week. You're no longer Orthodox?
Isn't that breaking any other rule? I spoke Lashon Hara, but...
Maybe. I'm asking you. Right? Either it is or it isn't. Either that would disqualify you from being Orthodox, or it doesn't disqualify you from being Orthodox. So my number one question is, how much Shabbat do you have to keep to be Orthodox? Which other laws do you have to do to be considered Orthodox? Who is deciding? And why do they get to decide? Why? Why do you get to say that they are or are not? How are you defining orthodoxy? Orthodox people never sin, right? Obviously, I've never met. I mean, but is it conceivable? That there's an Orthodox person that said, I didn't celebrate Shabbat last week because there was a college football game and I went? I mean, have we ever met such an animal? Does such an animal exist? I mean, of course, right? What? What's college football? Dude, let me tell you something, okay? Yeah, we're not, yeah. But anyway, who says? Who says? Is 98% enough? Which sins? Everyone likes, I heard this once from somebody, it's actually one of my favorite Hasidim in the world. He said to me, he goes, Shlomo, everybody likes their sins and hates the other guy's sins. Right? Your sins, very bad. My sins, they're okay. God doesn't mind. He overlooks my sins because I have the right sins. You're allowed to Lashon Hara, you're allowed to cheat on your taxes, people can have infidelity. No, that's a problem. But Shabbat and kosher, you ate a ham sandwich? Oh my God, you're not Jewish. I'm not saying they're wrong. I would just love to know where they discovered this magic barometer. Did they dig it up with the stones of Mormon? Where did they get these magic Orthodox, it's weird.
Doesn't Shabbat keeping Shabbat qualify you as, isn't that the general rule of thumb?
That's definitely the way that people talk about it. I would love to know why.
There's nothing in writing that states that.
For being Orthodox? Oh, so I'll tell you why not. Again, to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong, man. I say this all the time. I keep saying this because it's very true. I could be very wrong. But here's why it seems to me that it's not true. The halacha, the Jewish law, does not recognize the word Orthodox. There's no such category in halacha. There is no halacha called Orthodox, conservative, or reform. So in our zeal, in our Kanaik zeal to preserve the halacha, we have invented halachic classifications which do not exist. They don't exist. By the way, Orthodox and Reform are, according in the eyes of halacha, much more of a social construct than your gender.
Right.
This, according to halacha, is static. This, according to halacha, doesn't exist. They're words that don't exist. The halacha doesn't recognize Hasidim or Misnadim or the truth is Sfarim and Ashkenazi, it actually does. It actually does recognize those. You know what kind of classifications and qualifications and categories halacha recognizes? Kohen, Levi, Israelite, male, female, Jew, Gentile, Kohen Gadol, a Nazir, a Nazirite. Right? These are all things that the halacha actually recognizes, and you have different laws based upon these things because they're real. Orthodox? What's that? That's nothing. It's not a word. It doesn't exist. It's zero. So,
but keeping Shabbat is considered though one of the most biggest signs of your relationship with God as quote unquote keeping the mitzvah. That's the eternal sign.
Shabbat is huge. Shabbat is huge. The fact that, I'm not saying at all, God forbid, far be it from me to say that Shabbat is not important. Shabbat is paramount. It's number 4 in the 10 Commandments. It's number 4 in the 10 Commandments, right? It's like, it's made the big, right? Yeah, exactly. It's a big 10. It's up there. It's up there. Of course it is. Of course it is. And according to the Torah, if a guy doesn't keep it, we're going to throw him off a cliff. All I'm saying is, we create these arbitrary classifications that somebody like pulled out of his ear and he's like, okay, this is orthodoxy and this is not.
You make a mistake.
That's a different issue. Mistakes are mistakes. That we can leave off right now.
No, I'm talking about a mistake and then you're like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. I'm talking about a mistake. Oops, I got into a plane.
Right. So that wouldn't, again, if a person makes a mistake, that they would still theoretically be in that category. But it's irrelevant because the categories don't exist.
I thought I was a mistake. That's what I'm talking about.
That's called Omer Motor. We can discuss that afterwards. So no matter what you do, no matter what you feel about this subject, I think it's important to put in your mind that at least at some point, you should think about how you define orthodoxy and why. Maybe you shouldn't define it at all. But if you're going to define it, then I think you should really sit down and take a long, hard look in the mirror and understand why you chose these parameters to be your orthodoxy and whether or not they're consistent. That's something that I think each and every one of us has to do. But anyway, to go back just to recap very quickly, so either he asked for the dispensation, like we said, or he did not. If he did not, either he didn't because he doesn't care, or he didn't because he keeps Shabbat pretty much all the time, but not always. That's another possibility. Again, it's an intellectually honest possibility if you're looking at it from the outside and you don't know him, right? If you don't know him. Now, there is, in fact, another possibility, another meta-aggregate possibility that he did, in fact, ask for a dispensation, which is what they said they did, right? They said they asked for a dispensation. They said they were granted a dispensation.
Also for the inauguration.
Yes, correct. So that means that Politico reported that, in fact, the White House press corps, this is true, as ridiculous as it sounds, the White House press corps reported to the international media that Jared and Ivanka received the rabbinic dispensation to fly to Riyadh. Okay, well, what if it's true? What if it's true? So the first question everybody asks is, well, why didn't he name the rabbi, right? Why didn't he name the rabbi? Well, gee, I don't know. It's a mystery. Why didn't he name the rabbi? I mean, seriously? Why wouldn't the rabbi want everyone to know his name? Why wouldn't he jump up and say, I'm the rabbi that will the... Really? Because you Jews are such easygoing people. I can't imagine why the rabbi would crawl under a rock and never give his name to anybody. The poor guy's kids will never be accepted to a day school. They're going to have somebody's going to firebomb his house. People are crazy. So the fact that he didn't name the rabbi is not, it's not exactly revolutionary to me. If I was the rabbi, not that I am, I'm not a rabbi, I don't paskin, but if I did, I could certainly see myself being like, yo, keep it on the DL. And especially in the Trump camp, in that camp, you never know if anything is going to stay clandestine anyway. So, okay, well, would there be any reason, any conceivable reason, why a legitimate rabbi would give a dispensation for Jared Kushner to fly on Shabbat? If you recall, we said in the beginning, we quoted Jeffrey Salkin, who said that he is in no fear of contradiction on this point. I'm about to contradict him. He doesn't live in fear of that. That's okay. It's okay for him. It's okay for me. We're both fine with each other disagreeing. This is totally fine. I believe very strongly that he's wrong for two reasons. Very simple reasons. The first one, and again, I could be dead wrong on both of these, and I'm sorry if I am. Number one, he mentioned, and I quote, let me just get that quote again for you. He mentioned that the only reason to break Shabbat is when a life is at stake. And I quote, no, $1 billion arms deal with the Saudis doesn't count. It isn't even close, right? That's what he says. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense what he's saying. It makes a ton of sense until you actually think about it. Let's do this again. So you're telling me, right? Saving a life, everyone agrees. There's no argument on this point. Saving a life on Shabbat, to break Shabbat, to save a life, is a commandment. You must do it. You must do it. You must break Shabbat to save a life. Why would a $100 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia have any implications for saving lives, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. After all, that's just $100 billion of cookies, right? Oh no, my bad. It's $100 billion of weapons. I'm so sorry, I forgot. Right? Why would $100 billion of weapons going to the Middle East have any ramifications of pikuach nefesh, of saving a life? Well, gee, I don't know. I can't imagine a scenario. I'm racking my brain. Can't imagine. Really? Really? That's such a disconnect for you? That's such a disconnect that a reasonable person would think that negotiating a $100 billion arms deal with the Saudis could have life and death ramifications. Is that far-fetched? What's up, dude?
But hypothetically, although that is very dangerous,
Yes.
can you just fly on Sunday morning?
Oh, absolutely. It's no question.
Maybe the Fed is cheap.
That's funny. Okay, so leave it off for 1 second, because we can spin out to many tangents. That may be true.
You're just going to life-threatening as that's sad, but...
Yes, there are still a million dominoes that have to be there. My point is that taking the assumption and saying that it's absolutely not is, I think, very, very unreasonable, because I think it is. But the truth is, it's much stronger than this. It's much, much stronger than this. And I think that he missed the boat. I think he missed the boat. Even if it's not pikuach nefesh, even if you're going to say that there's a disconnect between this particular action and saving lives, this is just a deal. By the way, can we take a tangent for 30 seconds? The President of the United States is sitting with the King of Saudi Arabia to negotiate a weapons deal. Do you think they were sitting around handling on price, and that's why they had to get together? The King and the President had to discuss price? Or do you think perhaps there were a million other meetings on issues that the sale is contingent upon? Is that far-fetched? Do you think for 1 second that the government would do a $100 billion weapons deal without talking about parameters of other things? Of course. That's why he was there in the first place. I don't know those things. You don't know those things. I'm sure someone will leak it. It will come out. It will be on CNN. He'll get impeached for that too. Fine. But, I mean, come on. Right? It seems to be very, very like ABC's elementary obvious. Fine. But second issue, which is more halachically compelling than that, I believe, we mentioned before that there are halachic classifications. In Jewish law, there are classifications of people, there are categories of people. We mentioned a Kohen has different laws than a regular Israelite. Females and males have different laws. Jews and Gentiles have different laws. There's another category of person, and that person is someone that we call Karov L'Malchut. Karov L'Malchus if you're Ashkenazi, which means close to the government. According to the Torah, you're talking about a precedent of thousands of years. Thousands of years of precedent. I mean, the Gemara talks about this with Esther and Mordechai, for crying out loud. It's before the Second Temple. If you're close to the monarchy, if you're close to the government, you're a member of the government. I don't want to discuss how high ranking, because I don't know. Okay? If you're close to the government, the rabbis took you out of all those laws. They took you out of them. In fact, the Gemara allows people to totally break Torah laws in many instances because they were in the government. Now, why is that practical? I can't imagine any reasonable human being asking why that's practical. I think it's obvious why it's practical, but I'll speak it out anyway. This is it's a Mishnah. The Gemara talks about it, and so it talks about it in many places. It says that the house of Rabban Gamliel was the Nasi, he was the head of the Jews in Judea. He was the head of the government, he was the head of state. And he says that, in my house, in the house of Gamliel, half of the kids learn Torah, and half of the kids study Greek philosophy and politics. And the Talmud says, I thought you're not allowed to teach that to kids. Because there was, at the time, this is during the Roman Empire, this was not a good time to be Jewish over there. There were some major problems going on between the Jews and the Romans, and they said, you're not allowed to do that. And they said, what do you mean? This is the Gamliel family. They're Karov L'Malchus. They're part of the government. So you need a Jewish soldier, a chayal, stationed in Syria, on a mountain, with a gun and a radio on Shabbat. And everyone's like, what do you mean? Of course. But tell me something. You don't need another Jew in the General Council, in the Assembly of the United Nations? You don't need him there on a Shabbat? You only need the guy with the sidearm and the walkie-talkie? What are you thinking? So it doesn't make any sense to me how a person could say, no matter where you want to draw the line, on Karav Lamalchus and say, well, there's a guy who's a local, he's a local commissioner. Is he Karav Lamalchus? No, he's obviously not. Is the deputy communications director? I don't know. I'm not sure where you would draw that line. What I do know is that no matter how you cut it, Jared is there. No matter how you cut it, he's there. Now this means, fascinatingly, this means, I believe, and again, could be wrong, please, it means that not only is he allowed to fly on Shabbos to Riyadh to negotiate a $100 billion arms deal, if the president says, yo, sonny boy, fly with me to Palm Beach, we're going golfing on a Saturday, he can go! Yes! Because he's Karav Lamalchus! The government said, I want you here, you go. You go. They're allowed to do haircuts that Jews are not allowed to do. They're allowed to eat things that Jews are not allowed to eat. You need them. You need them. So, Tainus and Megillah. Also comes up in Baba Kama, I think. And and Sota, a few places. So stop. It's not nice, man. It's not nice. It's not nice. So, to say, now, by the way, does that mean that I'm saying that this is the reason that the rabbi that Jared spoke to supposedly said that? I don't know. I don't know him. I don't know if he asked the rabbi. I don't know what the rabbi said if he did ask him. I don't know if this was the reasoning of the rabbi. All I'm saying is a very simple idea. What I'm saying is when you see this in a vacuum and your mind goes, not orthodox, you're ignorant. You're ignorant. It's just not true. It's not true. And even if you're going to tell me, well, I disagree. I think, and actually it's amazing, one of my friends, my closest, dearest friends, love him, said to me that I don't think that Jared would have the category of Karav Lamalchus. I don't think that would exist anymore today. Fine. It's debatable. But it's certainly not obvious that he broke it, right? I mean, it's just not. It's not. Which, one thing I'm certain of, because I didn't want to talk about this. I have nothing to gain from floating this out there. I'm only going to get grief. There's no question. I can see the hate mail in my mind right now. Why am I talking about it? Because everyone else is. And they're saying things that I'm afraid are giving people a wrong impression and an incorrect picture. And unfortunately, no one that actually knows anything said something, so I have to. That's it. So why are you so certain? So one thing that I am certain of, we exist in a swamp. It's like, by the way, this environment of and social media, that environment is what got him elected. It got him elected because nobody fights better in a toxic waste dump than Donald Trump, right? That's his home court. That's home field advantage. You're not going to beat him in the swamp. That's why he won. But now we're getting sucked into this. So all of the things that they're saying in the op-eds, like, oh, this is terrible for the Jews, because now people are going to say, you know why that might be true? Because you're making an issue out of it. Do you really think that the Mormons are sitting there saying, you know, I read this op-ed about Jared Kushner, he flew on a Saturday, and apparently, according to Orthodox law, that's a no-no because I'm a big scholar. Why do you think they're doing that? Why does it keep getting replayed? Jews! Because these Jews want to throw hatchets at him, and these Jews think that it's fine that he doesn't keep Shabbos, and no one has to keep Shabbos. The point is, why are you even talking about it? Why is this so important to you? If no one would have said anything about it, gone like one of his tweets. It's just, now, I'd like to speak for a little bit about judging people favorably. This is like a very famous concept in Judaism. It comes from a Mishnah. It comes from a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers. It's translated as Ethics of Our Fathers. Doesn't mean that. It means chapters of our fathers. But in any event, in the Mishnah in Avot, the Mishnah says as follows. This is chapter 1, Mishnah 6. Yoshua ben Prachya says, Yoshua ben Prachya is a very interesting personage, by the way. He comes up in the debate between Nachmanides and Pablo Christianity in front of King, I think, Don Diego of Aragon, about 1,000 years ago when they were having these disputations between the Jews and the Catholics. So he was known to the Catholics at the time as the Rebbe, the rabbi of Jesus, which it turns out it's not true because the timeline is like 200 years off. But anyways, an interesting personage. And Yoshua ben Prachya says as follows: Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a rabbi. Uknei lecha chaver, and buy yourself a friend. And now we're getting to the part that I like. Ve'hevidan et kol ha'adam l'chav zechut, and judge everyone favorably. Judge everyone for zechut. That's what he says. Marvelous. Now zechut is generally translated as merit, but in this case it's translated as judge them favorably. That's all he says, by the way, in the Mishnah. This is like the great magnum opus of the great Tannahic rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya.
Wow.
Judge people favorably. Okay, I mean, it doesn't seem like a very impressive thing to say. Like, how does judging people favorably happen? Like, if I see somebody pulling out $1 from your wallet, I should think that they're probably pranking you and that it's like they're not stealing. Is this a commandment to be gullible? He's telling people they should be gullible, right? I mean, I know what Loretta Lynch was doing on the airplane. They weren't talking about grandchildren and golf swings, and I know why people don't release their speech transcripts or their tax returns. I know why. And I know that OJ killed Nicole. And I know that they deflated the footballs. So why are you telling me that I should pretend that none of those things happened? I thought that in yeshiva they teach you to be thought-provoking and intelligent. Why would you tell people to be, well, that's only when you're not sure. That's when you're not sure. Okay, so when I'm not sure. So you're telling me, so this great rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya is saying, he's going out on a limb here, this is a very big chidush, he wants to tell you something that you're not going to know. He says, if you really have no freaking clue about what happens, you judge favorably. What a mind-blowing thought. Whatever, I mean. I don't really seem to say anything. So, sorry, I can't sometimes. We should, Tanakh rabbis are very, very careful about their choice of words. Very, very careful about their choice of words. Let's analyze for a moment the words that he used. He said, Havidan et kol ha'adam l'chav zechut. Be a judge of humanity, l'kaf, to the holder of zechut, merit. Meaning if you look at one of those weights, the old school weights, right? This being merit and this being demerit, the weights of merit. So the term merit in Hebrew is zechut. Zechut. And I would like to, perhaps briefly, I hope briefly, go through some examples of zechut and explain to you what exactly zechut means and how it relates to this idea. And then we will tie it all the way back to the beginning, and then I will send you all on your way. So.
And then you'll what?
Send you all on your way.
Oh.
So. Some examples of zechut. By the way, there are countless examples of this in Talmudic and otherwise rabbinic literature, and I suggest that you look up this idea and see how it connects with each one of them. You'll see it's fascinating. For example, in the zechut, in the merit of three things, the Jews were merited to exodus of Egypt. They didn't change their names, they didn't change their language, and they didn't change their clothes. Okay, Gemara says this, the Talmud says, in the zechut, in the merit of these three things, they didn't change their language, they didn't change their clothes, they didn't change their names. That's how they merited to leave Egypt. That's one. Another one would be, you ever hear Hasidic people saying, Zechuso yogin aleinu. After a very big Hasidic rabbi dies, they will often say, oh, his zechuso, his zechut, his merit, yagain aleinu, should protect us. His merit should protect us, like a shield, right? It's like the rabbi died, and now he is my shield. That's another one. Probably the most famous one is Zechus Avos, the merit of our fathers, which people tend to think of, well, God really doesn't like us that much. Jews nowadays, they ain't much. But back in the day, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were wonderful. And therefore, in their merit, God loves them so much that he's nice to us also. Okay, that's another one. A good one, the Talmud says, those who mourn Jerusalem will be zocheh. There's the same word again. They'll be zocheh. They will merit to see in its rebuilding. That's another one. And I'll give you a good colloquial one, and I think that's enough examples for now. Colloquially, you'll see someone who becomes Baal Teshuvah, who returns to halachic Judaism, Many times people say, oh, you know why? You know why this person returned to Judaism in the zechus of his bubby? It was the merit of his bubby. Why? Because his great-great-great-grandmother used to light Shabbos candles, and that's why he became religious, because his grandmother lit Shabbos candles. Now, she turns to all of our grandmothers lit Shabbos candles, and also the Jews who are no longer Jews, who assimilated, their grandmothers also lit Shabbos candles, but apparently they didn't have the magic candle. You have to have the power candle. You have to have the power candle if you want your great-grandchildren to remain Jews. So it just seems a little bit like, basically, zechus is like magic points. It's magic points, right? Yeah, I have zechus points. Yay! So I can do whatever I want. How do I get more? What's the conversion rate? How many zechut points per sin that I do, and how do I accrue them? Very weird. Very difficult to understand, like the parameters of these things. Very strange. So I'm going to give you one last example of the idea of zechut, and then we're going to answer it.
Connect the 2 points.
We're going to connect the points. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I like to keep it random, keep you on your toes.
I know.
The final one is, we often say this at the end of a speech. People want to say Kaddish, and someone gets up and rattles off. You've heard this?
I do it all the time.
There you go. Rabbi Hananiah, son of Akashia, said, Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, God, blessed be He, the Holy One, wanted lizakot et Yisrael. There's that word, zechut. He wanted to give us merit. Lefikach, therefore, what did He do? Here, balahem Torah u'mitzvot. He gave them many Torah and mitzvos. He wanted to give them merit, so He gave them a lot of Torah and mitzvos. Okay, let's think about this for a minute, because it makes no sense. If you're telling me that zechut are magic points, right? If you do mitzvahs, God gives you a zechut. Here you go. Here's $1, right, with the face of God on it. Yes? Yes? He gives you the $1. Now tell me something. Let's say that He didn't have 613 mitzvot, He only had 50 mitzvot. 50 mitzvot in the world. A person comes into this world that does 50 mitzvot, and he's got everything. But that's not enough. God wanted to give the Jews many magic points, so He gave them many mitzvot. Explain this to me. If all God would have created was 50, why do you need more magic points than the 50? It's like an arbitrary. So he wanted to give them so much magic points, so He gave them a lot of Torah. Is it like He couldn't give more? Instead of 613 mitzvot, He couldn't give them 600,000 mitzvot? Why did He limit the magic points to this number, not that number? It's such a funny concept. He wanted to give them merit, so He gave them a lot of stuff. Why this much? And why would that even be meritorious? If they're magic points and He's the one who's doling out the magic points, then it doesn't really matter how many that there are, because He's the one that sets the game. So it's just... I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But don't worry, thankfully, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean any of that. And that it makes a lot of sense, actually. I'll explain it. So, believe it means as follows. Let's take one of them. Again, it works for all of them, but we'll just take one. The first one, in the zechus of 3 things, in the merit of 3 things, the Jews were able to leave Egypt. And those 3 things were, they didn't change their names, they didn't change their clothes, and they didn't change their language. And that is why they merited to leave Egypt. Now tell me something. Which is the biggest mitzvah from among these 3 things? The fact that they didn't change their names, they didn't change their clothes, or they didn't change their language. Which is the biggest mitzvah?
The clothing.
The clothing. Language. I got 2 language, 1 clothing. No one else is voting. I'll tell you, I'll give you a hint. None of them are mitzvah. There's no mitzvah to speak Hebrew. There's no mitzvah to dress a certain way, and there's no mitzvah to give your kid a Jewish name. You can name your kid
There is a
Unkelis.
mitzvah to dress. Women, somewhat, yeah.
I mean, it's a limitation in what you can and can't do, but like this way, certain clothes. Everyone has to wear yistin home. In yeshiva, sometimes it seems that
And you
way.
can't wear linen and wool.
That's true.
Yeah, linen
That's
and wool.
true,
That-
right?
that-
We found a mitzvah that
that's
pertains to clothing, even though they didn't change their clothes. It means they wore that.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it means that. I'll tell you what it means. It's so simple. I mean, it's really so simple, like mind-numbingly simple.
It's not doing this, not mixing with the people, or assimilating.
Excellent.
Not what?
Excellent. Not mixing with the people. You see, if the Jews lived in Egypt for hundreds of years, which they did, hundreds of years, and they spoke only Egyptian, and they gave Egyptian names, and they looked like Egyptians, and they talked like Egyptians, and they act like Egyptians, and they live like Egyptians, they're not Jews! Therefore, says the Talmud, in the merit of 3 things, the Jews merited to leave. What were they? Well, they didn't change their language, their names, or their clothes, meaning they were identifiable. They were distinct in Egypt at the time. If they had assimilated completely into Egyptian culture, you couldn't take them out. Can you imagine Moses knocking on the door of some guy whose great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was Jewish and he's not now, and saying, "It's time to go!" And the guy's like, dude, get off my property right now. Get off my property. I got the castle wall, I got my shotgun. You can't take them out if they're not distinct. You see, assimilation is not a new problem. It's a very, very old problem. It's a very old problem. So the Jews were distinct. Well, what does that mean? That means that the term zichut, merit, does not mean magic points as much as what you put in and the reaction to it. In the merit of is not some kind of very esoteric, lofty concept. In the merit of means action, reaction, consequence, boom. If not for the fact that the Jews remained distinct, they couldn't have left. And therefore, in the merit of the fact that they were distinct, they left. So the word zichut in the Torah will always mean without exception. Will mean a continuum of an action and its repercussions. Action and repercussions. That's what zichus means. So, as another example, we said before that his zichus his merit should shield us. Does that mean that, oh, my rabbi died and he was very holy, therefore God will shield me because my rabbi died? Think about it. Think about that. My rabbi died and he was holy, so God protects me. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It means the actions that he took, the repercussions live on today. That protects us. That's what protects us. So now let's go back to that thing that we always say, that God wanted lizakot, to give merit to the Jews, and therefore he gave them lots of Torah and lots of mitzvot. What does that mean? Well, if merit means repercussions of your actions, then you know how many things God wanted to give you mitzvot about? All of them. Every single human experience which is conceivable under the sun should be focused, should be mindful, should be aware. Whether it's how you go to the bathroom, the procedure there, oh yeah, serious. How you tie your shoes, what you eat, when you eat, with whom we do certain things. Do you think perhaps there could be like a little bit of an advantage in refraining from eating all the time whatever we want? I mean, could there be any conceivable advantage in that? Could there be any conceivable advantage in limiting sexual relationships to committed, focused relationships? Is that so beyond the pale? Is it strange to believe that, very mundane exercises involving inanimate objects could somehow be designed to help you treat people with respect? Is that possible? Is it possible you can go through disciplinary exercises which will help you be cognizant of other people? Well, yeah. So God wanted to give us repercussions. So he gave us a lot of Torah and mitzvah. What does that mean? It means that you know when the future happens? Now is when the future happens. We're making the future right now. We are creating the future now. See, we're going to do one of two things. Either we're going to raise kids that are respectful, or we're going to raise kids that are disrespectful. Either we're going to become a lazy people, or we're going to become not lazy people. We're going to be cruel, we're going to be kind. Who determines that? Is that like I don't know, flipping a coin? Is there any sort of correlation between how we act and what happens tomorrow? That's what zichut means. That's what it means. Well, let's think about this. So, let's take it back to the beginning. Rabbi Shlomo Sprung says, be judging of humanity. It's a very strange way of saying it. Be. He doesn't say judge humanity favorably. Be. Be, meaning it's an existential reality. Be a person who sees reality this way. That's what he's saying to you. Be a person who sees humanity, not your friends, not your Jewish community, not your shul, humanity for zechut, for merit. We said merit is the repercussions of my actions. He's saying every time you get in a fight with anybody, and by the way, it's funny how this works. Who do you fight with? After 6th grade, you only fight with people who are close to you, right? Who do we fight with? We fight with our spouses, we fight with our siblings, we fight with our parents and our kids, we fight with our partners, we fight with our lovers, we fight with our friends. That's who you fight with. That's who you fight with. And you say to yourself, I don't understand, this guy, I've loved him for 30 years, I hate him, he's a terrible person. He did this to me. Tell me something. For 30 years, he's been your best friend. All of a sudden, you realize he's been duping you for 3 decades. For 3 decades, he had you fooled. He was a great guy. Now he's a terrible guy. Planet are you living on? What planet are you living on? You've been so wrong for so long about your best friend? I don't think so. But you're not hearing your best friend. You're looking at a picture from your side. And you're saying, you screwed me over, and you stole from me, and you did something terrible, and what does the other guy think? That's what zechut means. Judge humanity for zechut. What they think the repercussions are. It's amazing, because everyone in the world, doesn't matter where you live or when you live, you look at the world and you're like, the world is evil, it's terrible. It's amazing to me that in a world with so much evil, how many people think they are evil? No one. No one thinks they're evil. Everyone thinks they're good, or at least mostly everyone. You think Boko Haram doesn't think that they're the greatest righteous people in the world? You think ISIS doesn't think they're tzaddikim?
Are there anything but something?
Okay, but that's what you think.
Right.
So Rabbi Shlomo Sprung is saying, dude, be a person who judges the other guy not through your eyes, but through his. What would he say? That's what l'chav zechut means. Well, yeah, I know he stole. I saw him steal. I saw him pull a dollar bill. I saw him pull a dollar bill out of the wallet. Okay, no problem. You don't have to think he's playing a prank. But why was he going to say? Is he going to say, I have to steal to feed my family? Is he going to say, I'm stealing from him because he took $1 from me and it's my dollar? What's he going to say? And it's amazing, because I promise you, that's a rarity. I promise you. It works. It works. If you think about the other person's perspective and why they did what they did,
Still, you're making assumptions.
100%, you're just doing your best. You will defuse most of your anger and most of the fights that would ever happen to you. Because the person is no longer evil in your mind, now they're just wrong. And if someone's wrong and you understand why they did what they did, and you put yourself in their headspace and you're like, hey man, I get it. Okay, this is where he's coming from. This is why he did it. This is what he was thinking. It's not your fault. You can talk to him. You can communicate. You can fix it. We have so much disaster because people don't talk. You don't understand people. It's, by the way, it's very, very funny. It's very, very funny because you want to see a classic example. This is so out there, out in left field, but it's true. It's so true. So I want to say it anyway. You want to see how this pertains to like terrorism? It's not a red herring. It makes a lot of sense. Let me show you how this concept pertains to terrorism. There's a terrorist, right? Those are the two things that are in the news every day, Trump and terror. Okay, fine. So you turn on the BBC, CNN, Reuters, New York Times, Slate, Drudge, HuffPo, doesn't matter. You turn it all on, and there's a terrorist attack. And what do you have? What do you have? You have people saying, you know why they did it? They did it because they're poor, and because they're uneducated, and because this reason, that reason, that reason, that reason, 85 reasons. The one reason that we're not really talking about is what they say they're doing it for. Why don't you give them the credit? Why don't you give them the credit to believe them that they mean exactly what they say? Is it so inconceivable in human history to believe that a person would say, it is a very good deed for me to kill you in order to bring the kingdom of whatever? That's been happening for eons. I mean, why would you think it's anything other than that? That's what they're saying that it is. But no. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Whose benefit? Yours. Yours! So that you can excuse the behavior. It's not about you. What's he say? What's he going to say? Is that reasonable? I think of it that way. To bring it back all the way to the beginning, if you have problems with the idea of a rabbi giving a dispensation to the Kushners to fly on a Saturday, that's fine. You might be right. And again, I'm not sure that he asked. I don't know if they're Orthodox. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's far from impossible. Far from impossible. And not only is it far from impossible, it might be a great idea. It might be the most wonderful idea in the world to have him in the room. It might be the biggest mitzvah. Maybe. But if it could be, why are you writing so many op-eds about it? Why? So when you're walking out of Price Cooper, and Mr. McGillicuddy says to you, "Excuse me, Shlomi, why are you leaving on a Friday afternoon?" You could stay for your job. The answer very simply is, because I am not going to negotiate a massive intergovernmental deal that will have ramifications for the life and death situations of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people. Judge from the other guy what he would say, what she would say, what they're thinking. And if we do that, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya says, we're 1/3 of the way there. Peace and love.